The story begins with a girl named Han Hub. She seems like an ordinary girl at first glance, but she has an unusual superpower. She can see glowing red sex lines floating above people's heads. One day, as she stands by her window, she notices these red lines connecting the people outside. Each line represents that person's romantic or sexual relationship. Suddenly, Han spots a girl with multiple red lines branching out from her head. That girl smiles at Han and casually says hi, but Han panics, slams the window shut, and locks the door in fear. Then, the scene transitions into a flashback from Han's childhood. Little Han is seen drawing with her dad, when suddenly she notices two red lines hovering above his head. Her mother sees it too, and instantly realizes the awful truth. Her husband is having an affair. Devastated and furious, her mother kills him on the spot. From that day on, Han understands how dangerous these red lines can be. Han becomes convinced that if she keeps seeing these red lines, she might end up ruining people's lives. So she shuts herself inside her room, refusing to speak to or interact with anyone. Falling deeper into depression, Han even attempts to take her own life, once by jumping from the roof and another time by stabbing herself. But every single time, she miraculously heals, as if nothing ever happened. These strange occurrences make her question everything. Maybe she wasn't cursed. Maybe she had a purpose. That's when Han makes up her mind. She will uncover the truth behind these red lines, what they really are, and whether it's possible to get rid of them. Just then, the same girl she saw earlier shows up at her doorstep. She's holding a basket of fruits, clearly meant as a gift for Han, but Han doesn't answer the door. The girl quietly leaves the fruits by the gate and walks away. Later, Han opens the door, brings the fruits inside, and begins to eat, like someone who hasn't eaten in days. The scene shifts, introducing a new character, Police Officer Ji-wook. At the station, he's chatting with his colleague and complains about his niece, Si-eun, saying she's too arrogant, never listens to him, and refuses to reply. The next scene takes us to a school. We meet a girl named Hae-young, who is seen violently beating Ji-wook's niece, Si-eun, on the rooftop. Hae-young is threatening her and forcefully demanding money. Meanwhile, we see Ji-wook working on a new case. A young girl has been found dead, and he arrives at the scene to investigate. There, he finds a hotel delivery box, suggesting the victim had ordered food shortly before her death. Another detective reports that a man wearing a helmet was seen leaving the building that night, possibly a delivery driver. Ji-wook heads back to the police station. At the station, his colleague Detective Dong-sik is sitting next to him. Dong-sik says the murder doesn't appear to be motivated by robbery, since all the money was untouched. Ji-wook then asks, "Did you check with the food delivery service?" Dong-sik replies that the girl used to order food often, but on the night of the murder, she didn't order anything. When Ji-wook asks about her relationship status, Dong-sik tells him she broke up with someone a year ago and had been single ever since. Meanwhile, Han is at home watching the news, and she sees a report about the same girl's murder. She notices something strange. The report claims the killer wore a helmet, but Han sees just one single red S line over his head. That's extremely rare. Suddenly, she notices a man wearing a helmet walking into the building across the street. His look, his vibe, it's exactly like the guy from the report. Panicked, she calls the police to report a suspicious man. But just then, she sees that it's only a boyfriend and girlfriend together. Embarrassed, she hangs up the call mid-sentence. Suddenly, everything around her fades into darkness, and all Han can see are hundreds of glowing red S lines surrounding her, as if she's being overwhelmed by an intense warning. Meanwhile at school, Hae-young is ranting that Seone didn't show up today. She breaks open Seone's locker and starts throwing her stuff out. Among the things, she finds a love letter and mocks it out loud, laughing at the contents. Then we cut to Ji-wook at home as Seone comes to him asking for money. Seone comes to ask Ji-wook for money. Without saying a word, he quietly pulls out his wallet and hands her all the cash, saying, "I'll bring you more tomorrow." But when he asks why she needs so much, she brushes him off arrogantly and walks away. Ji-wook then steps onto his balcony and looks toward the building across the street, where Han lives. He suddenly remembers that the emergency call last night came from that very place. Ji-wook walks over to Han's door. She's shocked when she sees the overwhelming number of S-lines hovering over his head. Ji-wook tells her, "If you know anything, please tell me." Just then, a neighbor steps in and mentions, "She never comes out of her apartment. Someone else even takes out her trash." Han suddenly opens the door and says, "I made a mistake. That guy, he was my lover." Then without another word, she quietly shuts the door. The scene cuts. A man wearing a helmet enters the same building. Han sees him and grabs a knife, stepping outside for the first time in a long while. But she's too weak and collapses. Still, she forces herself to stand, because deep down, she senses something terrible is about to happen. Meanwhile, the girl mistakes the helmet guy for her boyfriend, but when he removes his helmet, her face turns pale. It's not her boyfriend. It's Jong Min, the real killer. Shockingly, Jong Min can also see S-lines. He grabs the girl by the throat and starts choking her. Han arrives just in time to try and save her, but Jong Min wrestles the knife away from her. Just as he's about to stab Han, Ji-wook bursts in and shoots him dead. Han is visibly shaken. Ji-wook gently hands her back her glasses. She asks, "Who was that man?" Ji-wook replies, "I'll tell you everything." But right then, Seo-ni shows up. She looks at Han and says, "What are you doing here?" Ji-wook turns to them both and asks, "Wait, you two know each other?" Back home, Seo-ni asks Ji-wook, "So, when are you going to give me more money?" Ji-wook replies sarcastically, "What am I, your personal ATM?" Then he asks, "Is everything okay at school? If there's something wrong, you can tell me." But Seo-ni scoffs, "Since when do you care about me?" Ji-wook is left speechless. Ji-wook asks Seo-ni about Han. Seo-ni explains, "She was my classmate in middle school, but one day she just disappeared. Her mom killed her dad, and then she vanished too." In the next scene, we see Han sitting on the edge of a building saying, "If I can save people like this, then I have to. I will save them." Just then she receives a message. "I can see red lines too. Meet me at Ark High School." The next morning, we're introduced to a teacher named Kyu-jin. She teaches at Ark High School. At the school, we see Seo-ni again. Girls are writing nasty things about her on the board. Then Ha-young begins reading a letter that belongs to Seo-ni. Seo-ni tries to stop her, but in the scuffle, she falls, and Ha-young starts beating her up. Just then, their teacher arrives and pulls Ha-young away. Later, we see Kyu-jin talking to Seo-ni, trying to calm her down. "You can't do things like this," she says. "Stay out of fights." But Seo-ni snaps, "I'm going to kill her." "Can I go home now?" On her way out, Seo-ni checks her locker and finds a pair of glasses inside. She picks them up and puts them on. Meanwhile, Ji-wook is investigating the killer's home. The place is covered in swirling red lines everywhere. Back home, we see Seo-ni wearing the glasses, and through them, she can now see the lines. Ji-wook arrives, and when Seo-ni looks at him, she sees a swarm of S-lines above his head. She's terrified and runs out of the house. Han spots her leaving and senses something strange. Later, Seo-ni walks through the market and starts seeing the red lines over everyone's heads. It all begins to make sense to her now. The next morning at school, we see a huge change in Seo-ni. She's smiling, looking genuinely happy for the first time. Because of those special glasses, she suddenly sees Ha-young and notices two lines extending from his head. One of them veers off sharply, so she follows it, and what she discovers leaves her shocked. He's having an affair with one of the teachers. In the next scene, we see Kyu-jin introducing a new student to the class, and that student is none other than Han. After the introduction, Han quietly goes and sits at her desk. Meanwhile, Ji-wook arrives at the school, where he meets Kyu-jin. He tells her that he's a detective, and also reveals that he's Sayan's uncle. He begins asking about Jung-han, wondering if he always wore glasses. She replies that he never used to wear glasses at all, and he actually left the school some time ago. The scene then cuts to the rooftop, where we see Sion being bullied by Ha-young. Just then, Han steps in and confronts her, saying, "You need to stop this." But Ha-young grabs Han by the collar and drags her toward the edge of the building. Han quickly grabs Ha-young's tie and dangles off the edge, warning her, "If you don't stop, I'll take you down with me." Shocked, Ha-young lets go and shouts, "Are you crazy?" before storming off. Sion then approaches Han and says, "Who told you I needed your help?" Han replies, "Are you still mad at me?" Sion says coldly, "You should mind your own business." Later, Kyu-jin tells Ji-wook, "Aren't you going to meet your niece before you leave?" But he replies, "If she finds out I was here, she'll be furious." At this point, we start to sense that Kyu-jin may have feelings for Ji-wook. As Ji-wook leaves the school, Sion spots him and wonders aloud, what was he doing here? In the next scene, we find Ji-wook at a bar. Ji-wook is at a bar, asking the bartender about Jong Min. He learns that Jong Min used to come here often, but would always talk to himself and silently count people around him. We then see Jong-min seeing red lines above people's heads too. He's counting those lines. Ji-wook is writing all this down. Suddenly, a woman appears and jokes, "Who even keeps a diary these days?" Later, we see that same woman leading Ji-wook upstairs. Meanwhile, Seo-nae is tailing Ha-young and notices her meeting with the teacher. Seo-nae follows Ha-young to a hotel. Before entering, she snaps a photo of them both. Seo-nae sends the picture to Ha-young, but Ha-young doesn't seem bothered. She confidently says, "Nothing will happen to me. My teacher will take the fall." Seo-nae zooms in on the teacher's face, an idea sparking in her mind. The next morning at school, Seo-nae sends the teacher that very photo and demands, "Bring me 20 million as soon as possible, or I'll show this to everyone." We then see Ha-young being scolded by the teacher. Later, she's playing basketball when the teacher approaches her. She asks, "Why were you so harsh on me?" He replies, "Everyone was watching, so I had to do it in front of them." The teacher starts talking about the photo and says, "Seo-nae is behind all